So this weekend features one of the best and most exciting striking matchups of the year in the featherweight division as Calvin Kattar takes on Arnold Allen. And in this video, I want to break down and analyze this fight, as well as review some of the relevant notes and data surrounding the two fighters. So taking a look at some of the stats and data on these two fighters, Arnold Allen is 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. He is a southpaw and 28 years old. Calvin Kattar is 6 years his elder at 34 years old, 3 inches taller at 5'11" with a 2-inch reach advantage, and he stands orthodox. Taking a look at their significant strikes landed per minute, Arnold Allen lands at a rate of 3.31 significant strikes per minute, whereas Calvin Kattar lands 5.19, which is 57% more for Kattar, a pretty significant difference. But on the other side of that, looking at the significant strikes absorbed per minute, Arnold Allen absorbs 2.22 versus Calvin Kattar's 7.15, so 222% more for Calvin Kattar, absorbing a lot more strikes in that regard. So taking a look at some other interesting stats here, Calvin Kattar is currently 5th in terms of most significant strikes landed in the featherweight division. He also has the 6th most knockdowns in the weight class, and in the grappling, he is currently ranked 1st in takedown defense with a takedown defense of 91.3%, and Arnold Allen is no slouch himself, ranked 5th currently at 76.5%. Calvin Kattar also has the 3rd lowest bottom position time in the weight class at only 1 minute and 2 seconds spent on the bottom, so rarely gets taken down, rarely gets held there. Moving over to Arnold Allen, he currently has the 5th lowest significant strikes absorbed per minute at 2.22. He has the 2nd highest significant strike defense in the weight class at 66.7%, and he has the 3rd highest takedown accuracy at 50%. Vegas currently has this fight as a pick'em at -110 each. Arnold Allen inside the distance is +240, with Calvin Kattar inside the distance at +330. The fight going to decision is a minor favorite at -135. The fight not going to decision is +100. Allen by decision is +240, with Calvin Kattar slightly favored in the decision at +215. So taking a look at the strengths of Allen, he's very light on his feet, he hits hard, he has very good flurries, he has really good killer instinct when he has somebody hurt. He tends to just jump all over them with hard hitting flurries, including the one against Dan Hooker, which was, the most strikes I think I've ever seen thrown in 2 minutes. He was just winging punches hard, but that can also work against him, against somebody like Kattar, who's good over the course of 5 rounds, who can dart out of the way of danger, who can take a good punch himself, and can also land a shot in the flurry. Remember that Hooker did tag Allen in the middle of that flurry and knocked him down temporarily. It's just that Allen was able to get up and begin overwhelming him again. So it is noteworthy that although that was a highly offensive affair from Allen, it was mostly him bombing strikes most of that fight, he did get tagged in there. Allen's also a very smooth striker overall. He's good at darting in and out with 1 and 2 punch combinations. His hand speed is really fast. He's got blazing fast hands. He also has less mileage on him due to the youth advantage over Kattar, but also fighting less on average than Kattar and being in less wars. Kattar, on the other hand, has a competition strength advantage. He's had 5 ranked fights, whereas Allen's only had 1. So contrasting that with the strengths of Calvin Kattar, Kattar is very good at pacing himself, especially over the course of 5 rounds. He's been in 4 5-round fights, whereas this is Allen's first. Kattar is very proficient with his jab. He loves to just pepper opponents with that jab and just high volume overall in general. He typically will look to overwhelm opponents over the course of each round, and he tends to mix up his boxing style with a lot of elbows and knees. He'll throw them from weird angles, he'll switch stance, he'll throw them in an uppercut fashion, he'll throw them over the top, he'll throw spinning elbows, he'll throw flying knees and follow it up with weird punch combinations. And by weird, I just mean the timing that an opponent typically wouldn't expect. If you go back and watch that Josh Emmett fight, for instance, he throws a flying knee at one point and then lunges in with like a Superman jab against the fence, which caught Emmett completely off guard and sent him stumbling. So things like that are really interesting about Kattar's style. Typically when you look at Kattar, you think of a real tight high guard boxer, but he's more than that. He has some interesting Muay Thai to accompany it as well. Kattar's also really good with feinting a lot. He can throw off his opponent's timing and get them to bite on feints before landing more strikes. And he's also good at intercepting incoming blitzes with elbows and knees. And he's not afraid to throw takedowns in there too to mix it up when the opponent doesn't expect it. We saw this in the first round against Giga Chikadze when Giga started pressuring him heavily, and you could see that Kattar was starting to take some hits that he didn't want to. So he literally leapt at Giga. If you go back and watch that fight, the commentary even comments on it. He literally leapt at Giga across the cage to get that takedown. It was one of the most aggressive shots you'll see, but he got the takedown and he held him there for the rest of the round, and he was able to start building that fatigue. Started wearing Giga's arms out, holding him down, putting his weight on him, and that paid dividends as the fight went on. Some of the downsides to Kattar's style is he can be a slow starter. Typically guys that rely on a lot of volume and wear you out over the course of a fight, they typically will start slow, and compared to Arnold Allen, he's definitely a slower starter. Arnold Allen has a lot of explosive power early on in the fight, and I think as this fight goes on, especially past a round and a half, past 2 rounds, the chances of Kattar winning start to go up further and further, especially with his experience in 5-round fights against high-level competition. Allen tends to have really good flurries and hits really hard, as I mentioned before, which could be good early on in the fight to overwhelm Kattar. But a sneaky thing about Kattar is that if you look at his data, it looks like he gets hit a lot. You know, the data's there. He takes more significant strikes per minute than Allen does by quite a bit. But he's also really good at deflecting flurries coming in with that high guard. If you go back and watch that Josh Emmett fight, especially slow it down to half speed in slow motion to kind of see the details of Emmett's flurries, you'll notice that Kattar tends to step out of range and deflect a lot of the punches coming in with his high guard. He tends to use his elbows to deflect upwards or to turn and block shots. He's really good at deflecting those incoming flurries. So even though he gets hit on average more than a lot of guys do, he's good at breaking up those big bursts where, you know, a fighter like Allen may try to take him out if he smells blood. Now conversely, Kattar is also more vulnerable to 1 and 2 shot combinations. So if Allen can slip in a hard shot, which he's really good at with his hand speed and his crisp striking, he may stun Kattar to a point where it may be really hard to deflect those shots with his high guard. However, the problem with having a lot of power and being able to throw hard flurries for extended periods of time is you obviously dump the gas tank, which could be very dangerous against Kattar. If he dumps the gas tank too early, Kattar could easily run away with this and overwhelm him to a TKO or a decision win, and he could really get sliced up from elbows and punches, you know, like the jab, like against Giga, and just giving him problems overall down the stretch. Another thing to mention here too is Arnold Allen has hand issues. He's mentioned that he broke his hand in the Sadiq fight, and he also has had some tendon issues in his hands going into the Hooker fight. He had tendon issues in both hands and needed multiple cortisone shots to deal with the pain. Now, of course, injuries are one of those things that are completely random and you cannot rely on them whatsoever, and they may not even be worth bringing up in a breakdown, but I thought it was noteworthy because Allen himself has brought it up, and even though we haven't seen his hands impacted in his performances, at least not visibly, it is something that could occur, and it's worth noting even if it is a very low percentile outcome. So as far as the way this fight likely plays out, as I mentioned before, Kattar has a good high guard and he's good at deflecting flurries. He's also good at stepping out of range when he feels pressured. You know, he won't hesitate to circle out, and neither will Allen. Allen moves a lot, he cuts a lot of angles, he moves out of the way, he's always circling. So they both have really good movement in that regard, and it'll be hard to pin down either guy. Both guys will need good cage cutting to trap the other guy. Now, one of the advantages that Allen might have is that he has a southpaw stance. As I mentioned before, Kattar's last 10 opponents were all orthodox, so Allen's going to give him a completely different look in the cage. And on average, a lot of southpaw strikers like to counter strike, so there's a chance that he could walk Kattar into something, hit him with a big shot, finish him early, you know, as a faster starter than Kattar is, but that southpaw stance can also work against him. One of the best strategies to employ against boxing heavy fighters is leg kicks. You can weaken their base, fatigue them over time, killing their mobility, and eventually land a big shot. Allen does like to use leg kicks, but it's usually with his lead leg, which sacrifices some of the power that you would get from kicking with your rear leg. You can't wind up as much, it's more of a flick. The problem with implementing that rear leg more as a southpaw versus an orthodox fighter is that when you throw that rear leg kick, you open yourself up for right hand counters over the top, and that right hand of course is Kattar's power hand as an orthodox fighter. But overall, I think it would be a good idea for Allen to implement those leg kicks early on to just start building up fatigue in Kattar's legs, killing his mobility to hopefully land a big shot of his own, and if the fight goes the distance, those leg kicks will really pay off in the later rounds. However, it would also be a good idea to potentially overwhelm Kattar early on if Allen can. He's got the hand speed advantage, at least in my opinion. He has plenty of power in his hands, he moves very light, and he's at his best within 2 rounds. As the fight goes on longer and longer, that's typically where you see Kattar pick up speed and get better. It's not that Allen isn't good himself, it's just that that's where Kattar is at his best. So looking at this fight, I think that this fight is really dangerous for Kattar early on, but as it goes on, he'll continue to build up his jab, build up fatigue. He may mix in takedowns, you know, his knees, his elbows, his body shots, things like that will really start adding up. And another factor here could be the cuts. Kattar throws really nasty elbows, as we saw with Giga. Giga's face was totally sliced up from the elbows that he was hitting him with, and if Allen has to deal with blood in his eyes as well as exhaustion, the clinch, you know, and eating that jab over and over again, it could be a really long night for Allen. Another relevant note on Allen is if you watch his fights where they do go the distance, he tends to start clinching more as the fight goes on, which in theory should make Kattar's chances at landing knees and elbows even better. Based on Kattar's experience against high-level competition and going the distance multiple times, I think he has a good chance here to drag Allen into deep waters and to make it an endurance-based game rather than a power-based game early on. I think he can weather the early storm with his high guard, with his feinting, with his moving in and out, and with his timing disruptors such as his knees and elbows to be able to drag Allen into a fight that he does not want to fight. Overall, I agree with Vegas that this fight is a pick'em, and I could see either fighter winning this fight in a variety of ways, which makes it a great matchup. It's going to be really exciting, and no matter what happens, I can't see an outcome that isn't exciting. No matter who wins the fight though, I think we as the fans are the real winners here, because this is one of the best striking matchups of the year in my opinion, and I just can't wait to see these two step in the cage.